Hey adventurers, this is Chase with American Vintage Adventures again, and I know that you have tuned in to watch the great surrealist art film come to life from the mind of Walt Disney and Salvador Dali. Of course, I'm talking about Destino, but I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of my interpretation of it and my review and how it applies to the legacy that is now continuing forward some 50 plus years later, with not only the release of the film 20 years ago, but the now new or fairly new Gran Destino Tower at Disney World, that resort. And I've taken a extensive look at it lately, and you will be seeing that coming up on my AVA guide to Gran Destino Tower here in a couple of days. But I wanted to kind of set that up with this film because without Destino, obviously Gran Destino Tower doesn't exist. It really captures all of the surrealist sort of artistic, old school glam, golden era of Hollywood vibes mixed with the Spanish motif. It is all there in the Gran Destino Tower, just like it is in this film Destino. So that film will be here. I have the whole film at the end here. You'll be able to see it in its entirety. But I wanted to set it up because I think there's a little bit more to the Destino film than we kind of see on the surface, and I think that's also reflected in Gran Destino Tower. A little bit of history. The Destino film started after Walt and Salvador Dali met each other back in 1945 at a party. I believe it was Jack Warner of Warner Brothers was having a party, and the two met each other there.
He liked to go to parties. He liked to hobnob with Hollywood stars. He had his picture taken with Spencer Tracy and Laurel and Hardy.
Both realized they were big fans of each other and immediately wanted to work on something together. Now, Walt was already in a habit of bringing in fine artists to teach his animators new ways of art, new ways of drawing, to help bring that Disney style, that more advanced style of animation to life. And so he actually brought in Salvador Dali for that, to work with the animators very briefly.
One of the things that Walt Disney was absolutely determined to do is to make artists out of animators. He instituted a permanent instruction course at the studio, an instruction course in fine art. It was Walt's theory that there was no distinction between animation and fine art.
As his animators got better, he started to try to use the medium in ways that had not been seen before.
It didn't take long until they came up with an idea, and Dali had an office, and off they went.
Two great artists at the peak of their powers, thinking they're going to do great, great things. The tragedy is Destino was a casualty of the financial pressures of the studio.
The project disappeared so deeply that when they came upon the art many years later in the archives,
it was like somebody uncovering a Van Gogh up in their attic that they didn't know they had.
This film, Destino, which is about an ill-fated love story between the god of time, CHRONOS, and a mortal woman called Dahlia, is what they called her in the film. And that's the part that I think has maybe a little bit more interesting history to it. Now, as someone who is an artist myself, you can see I have a very surrealist style piece of artwork here that I call The Colorful Mind of Walt Disney. It's a painting I did, and it's things that are very dear to him. Of course, you have Mickey Mouse, and you have the castle at Disney and the partner statue, and you have Epcot represented, and you have the monorails. These were all things, the trains, these are all things that came straight from his mind, that he was really passionate about. And of course he wanted everything to be in color. He pushed everything in color. So I definitely feel like this is a piece of artwork that both Disney and Dali would appreciate. I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but it definitely came from the heart. But back to the Dahlia herself and Destino. Now, just like me with this painting, every artist gets their inspiration from somewhere. And if you know a little bit of your history, during the time that this short film was being thought up, there was a very, very famous case of an ill-fated Hollywood starlet who had come to Hollywood to seek fame and be an actress, and she was murdered. And that very famous murder case of this ill-fated starlet was quickly dubbed the Black Dahlia. At the time, there was a film out that was very successful that was a noir film about crime and murder and things like that with a femme fatale, and it was called The Blue Dahlia. So the headline writers quickly dubbed this murder, the murdered person, Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. And when I think about how that was going on at the same time that Salvador Dali and Walt Disney were coming up with the film idea for Destino, which is, again, about an ill-fated love affair that doesn't end well. It's just it's bad from the start. The ending's not going to be good. And your main character is a female with dark hair called Dahlia. Well, I can't help but make that connection. And it might have nothing to do with it, but these things were happening at the same time. So I kind of had that in my mind. And then when I took the AVA guide to Gran Destino Tower, and I went up to the 16th floor to the Dahlia Lounge, on the back wall, in amongst this surrealist setting with the Hollywood golden era glam and modernism that mixes that that gives you that surrealism, on the back wall is a woman, and it's the Dahlia. Now, it's supposed to be the Dahlia from Destino, and you see her dark hair flowing, but when I see it, the first thing I actually thought of is I'm in the Dahlia Lounge, and she's in all black back here. I thought of the Black Dahlia, and you can't help but see the resemblance to the Dahlia artwork on the wall and the Black Dahlia, the real woman who was part of this very famous case. And like I said, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with it, but it has those same vibes. It comes from those same era, and it was being created at the same time. Now, ultimately, it proved too expensive at the time to be done. The war was interfering, and maybe because of that dark atmosphere that was brought in because of the Black Dahlia, maybe that led to Walt and Salvador Dali having differing opinions on how it should go. Walt wanted it to be more of a love story, and it's okay for it to be ill-fated, but he wanted it to be more obvious, where Dali wanted it to be much darker. And that maybe was influenced by the Black Dahlia case. In my opinion, it's just that could be easily where an artist would have gathered their inspiration. And so I see that, especially when you factor in that Hollywood golden era glam that's also present in the Gran Destino Tower. Maybe they are unrelated. I think maybe they had something to do with one another. But either way, the project proved too expensive at the time. They had already invested $70,000, and this is 1945, 1946, 1947, $70,000. That's just a huge amount of money. And they just said it's not going to go anywhere. And they remained friends, but they stopped working on the project.
There's been a lot of speculation about why Destino never got made. One opinion has it that the vogue for package films was over, although Melody Time was released a couple of years after they started this project, and it wasn't in it. The other theory is that this was so bananas a project that Walt just couldn't release it. Perhaps Dali was too strong a design for Disney. Disney had to put his own mark onto whatever he did, And the fear was that it was too much Dali and too little Disney.
This is one of the descriptions of what happened at the studio, and this is by Jim Bedrero, a social friend of Dali's as well as an artist at Disney's. One Monday I arrived at the studio and I found this note on my desk called Violet, Walt's secretary. Violet said, "Have you been down in the Dali unit lately? The boss is down there and he's blowing his top and yelling and screaming for you." I went down there and Walt said, "Take a look. All the beautiful, moody drawings of the girl were gone and the place was covered with the most beautiful drawings of baseball players." Dali turned up and Walt said, "What the hell's all this baseball?" Dali said, "Nice, huh?" Walt said, "What's it got to do?" Trailing off into a high-pitched sound of frustration. Dali said, "The regard of God, the regard of the universe." Walt said, "What do you mean?" Dali said, "Sometimes they lie down like this in regard. Sometimes with both hands they regard. Sometimes they take a stake in regard, but always regarding, regarding, regarding." He just said it was inspiring, all these men looking at the sky. Walt said, $70,000 gone down the drain. And he said it was the end. Call it off, pay him off.
Ultimately, all that remained of Destino were the sketches done by John Hench and Salvador Dali and some original beautiful paintings and 17 seconds of test animation. And the project was shelved and everything lay unseen, unused.
But over 50 some odd years later, Roy Disney helps finish the project, bring it to life.
We'd had it for 50 years, gathering dust. Something went ding in my head, and I thought, well, wait a minute, what if we make the film now?
And the next thing you knew, we were being charged with finishing Destino.
Working with those storyboards, you could do it about 18 different ways. Yeah.
Once I decided I was going to do this, it got more emotional as it went forward. I was going around to everybody saying, look, here's this opportunity to do something really unusual. I got a lot of resistance about it, and I really kind of just went ahead and did it anyways.
And now we have the completed short film, Destino, which you will see here. And that legacy is continued on with the creation of a Gran Destino Tower, where you can see that film's influence, the surrealism influence, and that artistic and golden era of Hollywood vibe that encompassed that time and imagery that both Walt Disney and Salvador Dali had in their head when they went to create this. So without further ado, here is the film, and I hope that you enjoy it. I'll see you later.
Can smile and say Destino. My heart was sad and lonely, and knowing that you only could bring my love to me. along. Out of a dream I recall